Today I'm going to walk you through exactly what I do every single morning in order to prepare my trading plan for the day. So let's get right into it. One of the most important criteria to me is how much volume a pair has. Now I trade only the Bitcoin pairs, and when I'm doing that, I'm looking for at least 300 Bitcoin volume. I found that this volume threshold really suits best for the way I trade and allows me to get in and out of trades successfully. So on the right hand side here, you can see all of the coins that are Bitcoin pairs that are over 300 Bitcoin volume for the day. I've already added them to my watch list so that I can just click through them quickly and chart as I go. Now these top 4 pairs here, they're always going to be in that high volume range. It's just the main Bitcoin to the US dollar. I also keep Ethereum to the US dollar here just so I can watch the price of that. And then Ethereum to Bitcoin and BNB to Bitcoin. I almost never trade any of these 4, as price movement of the 1.2% that I target is a significantly larger number than the ones that I'm dealing with, the small amount of sats. Now just a reminder before we dive into some charts, please do click the like and subscribe buttons below. This helps me out a ton. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and skip over those 4, starting at Link BTC, which I know is the highest volume coin for the day. Once I click on that, open the full chart of it, and I'll just shrink the left hand side there. I know I'm going to be clicking through them, so I want to leave it open a little bit, but I also want to maximize the amount of space I have. So typically, because I do this every single day, I do have previous lines on the chart from other days. However, for today, I'm going to make all of my charts clean and show you my exact thought process of why I'm placing support and resistance lines and how I'm going to take a trade if it actually comes to one of those. Now I did go over exactly what my strategy is in one of my previous videos, which I'll link in the top right corner right now. And I also went over a live example of one of the trades I took in the past following this exact same methodology. The links to both of those videos will also be in the description below. When I first open this chart, I'm looking for support and resistance lines that I know I can trade based off of. So one of the most important things is that I'm looking for something that's lower than our previous lows when it's downtrending like this in a chart like Link. So I'm looking below this line here where I'm hovering, and I'm just going to start looking for support and resistance lines. This wick right here looks pretty good to me, especially because we came down and supported it there. I'm going to draw a blue line on that one. And then the second one I see is this support used right here. I'll kind of hover over a little, see that it's, pretty good support and resistance line. I'll throw one there as well. So this is pretty far away from actually entering a trade, about 4%. What I would do is just set an alarm now right below this low, so that if it breaks this, I know that I'm actually coming down to the zone where I'm going to go ahead and take a trade. And that's really it for Link. I'm waiting until we break through this low, and then once we get much closer to this, I'll end up setting a bid just above this blue line, and my stop loss will probably be below this blue line. I tend to target about a 2.5% stop loss on my entries, and that's perfect for this support right here. I like to keep my stop loss on entries below the next support that I find. So having 2 supports close like this is exactly what I'm looking for. Now that I've set my alarm, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next chart. Just a heads up that the free version of TradingView, I believe you can only set maybe 3 alarms maximum. So if you do want to go ahead and use a ton of different alarms, which I find super helpful, they send text messages and emails to my phone so that if I'm not staring at the chart all day, which I definitely try not to, I'm immediately alarmed of when something is coming close to trade and I can hop back to my computer or open an entry on my phone, etc. If you want to sign up for TradingView, there's a link in the description below as well. So now, next up is SOL BTC. By looking at this, I can see that this coin was recently added to Binance, and ever since its spike upwards, it's just been a huge trend downwards. The last support zone on the left-hand side here before our spike was this level right here, actually where we're sitting right now, and we've already broken below that. I'd be looking for a support below our lower low here, and there actually is none. If we were to break below this, this could easily fall all the way back down to here. Now I'm not suggesting that we will, it's just there's nothing to trade off of here. When we're trading, we want to have an edge, and there is no edge here, so I'm going to just move on from this chart. Next up is XRP BTC or Ripple. When I first opened this chart, it's pretty clear to me that this has just been going sideways for more than a week. Yeah, there's some swinging back and forth, but there's no real movement that I like to see when I'm looking for an entry. Now maybe if I'd opened this chart back on this day, I saw this massive move upwards, I'd be looking for some sort of support and resistance on the way back down to catch. However, just looking at this general pattern, I'm not really seeing anything. Just for one last check, I'll move out to the 30-minute chart, and I'm really confirmed of pretty much the same thing. I don't really care to trade this unless we break this low right here. So just for future preparation, I'll start looking for some support and resistance below here. So maybe somewhere in here looks good to me. This is actually pretty close to where a low was before. So now one more rule kind of comes into play. If we bounce off of an area, I don't like to use that same area again. And similarly, I don't like to use an area that's close to it. I like to give at least about a 1% room to bounce. Because if we were to come down here and use this blue line as support and then go upwards as I would be expecting, this zone right here is going to be resistance. And this is before my profit target would be. So that really just makes the trade harder to win. So as you can see, this is only about 0.5% below this. So I'm actually going to go ahead and delete this line and look for something even lower. The next real support and resistance line I see is somewhere down here. Uses this and a bunch of different things in here. Pretty far away from this, but I will go ahead and set an alarm again just below our lower low. And just wait for this to trigger and send me an email and a text. Moving on to BCH BTC. Because this is another major pair like the first four I was talking about, I don't really trade this very often. However, I do look at it at times and see if a really good trade is setting up. Even having this open on the 30-minute chart and zooming all the way out here, I'd be looking for something below this low that we already spiked down to, and there's not really any good support and resistance zones in here, so I don't really care to trade this. I'm going to go ahead and move on to my next chart. So next up is XMR BTC. Doing the same thing here, and I'm going to look for support and resistance zones. So I think that this peak right here is pretty clear. Uses that as well. That's actually a major spot that I'd be looking for. Now one thing I like to make sure of, that if we go upwards and we're coming back down to a support that I'm seeing, I want to make sure we've pushed at least 5% off of that zone. If we've only gone up a little bit and then try to come back to a support zone, I tend to find those a little bit weaker and I don't trade those. So I'll go ahead and make sure. And you can see, even though it looks like we've gone up a lot, it's actually only 2%. And that's actually a reason I don't trade XMR BTC a lot as well, because a major move like that is 2%. So if I'm looking for a quick 1.2% trade, it's not going to be easy when major spikes in the market are 2% moves. So even pulling this down to see where that 5% even would start to be reasonable, it would be all the way back down here. Now we're nowhere near that, but I will say that it does look like a very good support and resistance zone in there. Moving that down just a little bit to catch some of the other wicks, and I'll go ahead and set an alarm on this one as well. We're far away, but who knows, this could start come down and this would be a very good spot to buy as well. Moving on to XTZ BTC or Tezos. Now just like with Ripple, this one's been really sideways for upwards of a week. I'm not really looking for any trades in this zone, and I'm waiting for it to come down much further. And looking back even further, you can see that we already, after our major move up, came down and found a nice support zone here. And this kind of plays into one of my other rules that I follow. So once we go upwards a ton and we come back down, this is a bounce area. We don't want to use a double bounce area. So this is not a support resistance line that I would play again. As a result, I know I'm pretty far away from a trade on this. This was more than 6% away. I could start to look for things way down here. It would be much better though if this moved upwards and then I could buy in this area where we've formed awesome support and resistance. I'm going to go ahead and close this chart, and I know I'm going to check it again tomorrow anyways if it's high volume, so there's no point in looking down here yet. Next up, another major pair is Litecoin to Bitcoin. Again, don't trade this one very often, as I've said before, but I will look at it anyways. I'm going to zoom this one out to the 30-minute chart because I'm just not seeing enough data here. And you get a much clearer picture of where we actually are in the cycle of this. It just kind of went downwards, had a nice rebound. This would have been a good area to short, and this just keeps moving downwards over and over again. I will still look for a good support and resistance line, and actually seeing this area right here this is actually a pretty good zone. However, this is the double bounce situation that I was speaking of. We went upwards, came back, used this as our support, and this actually double bounced successfully, so it used it as a support again. I would not play a third bounce here, and as a result, I'm not seeing any good support and resistance below that line. I'm not going to set any alarms on this one either. Next up is EOS to Bitcoin. So looking at this on the 15-minute chart, it's been slowly moving upwards for a while. This is a pretty good chart to be looking at to open a trade. I'm going to start looking for support and resistance lines in this, as I always do. And even going back all the way to the left-hand side here, you can see that this zone is pretty significant. And once I hover over it, it really captures this pretty nicely, all of this, so much area here. So the next thing I need to do is see if we've moved 5% off of that. We haven't. It's only been about 1.5%, so this is not a zone I'm going to trade anytime soon. So pulling just the entire price of this is only about a 3% move as well. I'm really not looking to trade this anytime in this area, that means. So I'm going to be looking for some things all the way down here. And depending on how many alarms I've already set for the day or how many things are looking close, I might just close the chart at this point since it's pretty far away from a trade. However, most pairs are looking pretty far away at this point, so I'll go ahead and just look for something lower in here. And I see that this zone in here looks pretty strong, and after I draw it, maybe pulling it down just a hair to catch this wick as well, and this one as well, and all of these bottoms. This looks like a pretty good zone. So I'll go ahead and throw an alarm just below here, and if we start to come down, I'll be prepared to take a trade in this zone. Up next is ARK to Bitcoin. Now this is one of those pairs that have spiked 50% over, a 1 day period. I almost always immediately close these charts. Who knows why it's moving upwards so much so fast, but they tend to always rebound down all the way. Even looking at it from a support and resistance standpoint, sure, you've got this wick that's all the way up here. You could have potentially played that, and it looks like you would have got a nice bounce in there. You might have a little zone in here that you could potentially play. But if you take a trade here, really, where are you going to set your stop loss? Where's the next best support and resistance line? It's all the way down there. Now pulling that's about 3.5%, so even going just below that, you're going to take about a 4% loss. That's almost twice my risk level, so this is not something I'm going to take this high up. I will leave this bottom one. There's a good amount of support and resistance below this. We're pretty far away though. I'm going to set an alarm that's roughly 2% away from it, and if we start to come to it, I'll consider taking a trade on this. It's definitely not going to be my top priority, and the volume's still going to have to be very high when we start to come down here, which almost never happens. These things tend to spike in volume, which is why they get onto my threshold, and then as time goes on and they slowly fall downwards back to a zone that I would potentially trade, the volume is way out of my threshold and I don't take them. Next up, we've got ENJ, or Engine Coin. Now this looks like a chart that I would be looking for a trade very soon on, based on the fact that it's going upwards, it's trending up nicely, and it has a nice move over a sustained period of time. I'm now looking for a rebound on this chart, so let's go ahead and look for some support and resistance zones here. Hovering my mouse a bit, I can see that this one is used very nicely all the way across. I'm almost certain this is a 5% move upwards, but we'll go ahead and measure it just in case, and yeah, we've moved about 10% off of that zone. We've already retraced about half of it. Because it's so far, I know I can actually look for support and resistance even somewhere above that, and this one immediately catches my eye as we use these wicks here, and these wicks here, and these in here. So this is definitely an area I'm looking to take a trade. Now that I know that this is roughly going to be my entry, let's see if I can use the bottom line as a stop loss here. I'll go ahead and pull this down, and yeah, great, it's about 2%, which means if I set my stop just on the other side of this, we got a roughly 2.5% risk, which is exactly the kind of trade I'll take. Next thing I'll do is I'll just set an alarm to when we're about 2% away from this, which actually we're sitting very close to right now. I'm just going to set an alarm below where our low is right there, and as soon as we break that, I would set up an entry right at this blue line with a stop loss right below this one. Once my entry hit, I would be setting an OCO order on Binance. If you don't know what that is, watch my tutorial on Binance where I go over that. I'll link that in the top right corner. Basically what it means is I'm going to set a stop loss below this blue line and a profit target somewhere up in this area wherever 1.2% of my entry was going to be. From there, I just let the trade sit and play out. Last but not least is VET, BTC, or VChain. Now opening this chart, I see it's one of them that are below 3 digits in sats or below 100. These I almost never trade as well because each sat move is going to be a significant number. So with a pair that's around 50 sats, every single point that it moves is going to be about a 2% move, which is already at my risk level and already above my target as well. These are hard to trade in such short periods of time, and so for the most part, I just entirely avoid these. Now, if I were to see a really good opportunity like this moving upwards for a long period of time, sustained, and then start to come back down, I might look for a really good support and resistance line. The other problem with these is that almost every single line becomes a really good support and resistance line. So you can see that this one has a lot of action all over in this area. So does this line, so does this line, so does this line. I think you see what I mean with these. It's really hard to pick out a good area to find your advantage, as every single support and resistance line is used for such long periods of time because they're significant moves in the market. I hope you guys learned something from this and can take it into your everyday trading plan as well. Whatever your strategy might be, make sure you adapt it and you use it every single day without trying to make too many changes. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, please do click the like button below and hit the subscribe button for more videos in the future. If you have any ideas of videos you'd like to see next, please let me know in the comments as well. I would love to make them for you.